Hello! Welcome to the U.S. Hall of Fame for Presidents. Right, today we will be inducting Ronald Reagan into the Presidential Hall of Fame. Ronald Reagan was an American politician and actor who served as the 40th President of the United States from 1981 to 1989. Reagan belongs in the Hall of Fame because of his success with improving things domestically and improving foreign relations. One big thing that Ronald Reagan did was he changed the course of the Cold War through the Reagan Doctrine. Reagan believed that the Soviet economy was very weak, and he believed that increased pressure on its economy would make it fall apart. He adopted a more aggressive approach to the USSR by ordering a massive buildup of U.S. armed forces. He adopted a strategy known as the Reagan Doctrine. The Reagan Doctrine was when the U.S. provided open and covert support to anti-communist forces in nations that were controlled by communist governments in Africa, Asia, and in Latin America. The policy did diminish Soviet influence in certain regions. Supporters of the Reagan Doctrine consider it to be a very important contributor in ending the Cold War. Reagan also played a key role in ending the Cold War. Ronald Reagan shifted his policy towards the Soviets from peace through strength to a mixture of firmness and reassurance when Mikhail Gorbachev came to power in the USSR. The two leaders met for 4 summit conferences between the years of 1985 and 1988. During the third summit in December of 1987, the INF Treaty was signed by both Reagan and Gorbachev. The INF Treaty eliminated 2,692 nuclear and conventional missiles with short and intermediate range. Reagan played a key role in the end of the Cold War when he signed the INF Treaty with the new leader of the USSR, and Reagan's firm but fair policy towards the Soviet Union played a key role in bringing the Cold War to a peaceful end. Ronald Reagan influenced the leader of the USSR to take down the Berlin Wall. In 1987, Reagan spoke at the Berlin Wall, which was a symbol of communism, and challenged Gorbachev to tear it down. The official purpose of the Berlin Wall was to keep Western fascists from entering East Germany and undermining the socialist state. It primarily served the objective of stemming mass defections from east to west. 29 months later, Gorbachev allowed the people of Berlin to tear down the wall. The fall of the Berlin Wall symbolized a key turning point in diplomatic and government powers, as it showed the supremacy of the capitalist government and soon ended in the downfall of many communist countries. Ronald Reagan signed many bills that set aside millions of acres of land in the U.S. Between the years of 1982 and 1988, Reagan signed 43 bills designating more than 10 million acres of federal wilderness areas in 27 states. This acreage accounted for nearly 10% of the National Wilderness Preservation System at the time. Reagan had signed more wilderness bills than any other president since the Wilderness Act was enacted in 1964. This is helping America domestically because by setting aside land, he is preserving the environment for future generations. He was setting America up for a very sustainable future. Ronald Reagan's economic policy resulted in a considerable decrease in unemployment and inflation. Reaganomics led to one of the largest peacetime economic booms in U.S. history. Ronald Reagan created an economic policy known as Reaganomics that was based on 4 main principles: restrain government spending, lower tax rates, reduce government regulation, and tightening of the money supply to reduce inflation. During the Reagan administration, the unemployment rate was reduced by 1.6% from 7.1% in 1980 to 5.5% in 1988, and the inflation rate fell from 13.5% in 1980 to 4.1% in 1988. The sum of inflation and unemployment rate decreased from 19.99 to 9.72 during Reagan's term, which was the greatest improvement record for a president since Harry S. Truman. The economic reforms of Ronald Reagan resulted in one of the largest peacetime economic booms in American history.
Ronald Reagan deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame because of the work he did to improve the U.S. economy. Also because he ended the Cold War and he improved relations with the Soviets.
Hello, today we'll be inducting James Buchanan into the Hall of Fame because of his role in contributing to the rising tensions between the North and South that started the Civil War. James Buchanan was the 15th president and served from 1857 to 1860. One of the things Buchanan failed to do was he wasn't able to stop the 7 southern states from succeeding the Union. He believed that slavery was a matter for states and territories to decide instead of the federal government. He believed that the South succeeding was illegal, but there was nothing the government could do about it. Buchanan was unsuccessful in making the southern states stay in the Union, and the southern states leaving further increased tensions between the North and the South. After the South succeeded, there was a series of major events that led up to the Civil War. Another thing Buchanan failed at was siding with the southern states in 1846, who blocked the Wilmot Proviso, which was supposed to ban slavery in any territory acquired from Mexico in the Mexican-American War. He also supported the Compromise of 1850, which dealt with the land from the Mexican-American War. The North gained California as a free state, and the South got a tighter fugitive slave law. This block on the Wilmot Proviso greatly increased tensions between the North and the South, and they contribute to argue about whether slavery should be allowed or not. Buchanan also enforced the fugitive slave law. This law made it a crime to help runaway slaves. If someone got caught, they could be fined $1,000 or even be jailed for half a year. This scared many citizens, and many of them turned slaves in order to avoid the punishment that came with harboring a runaway slave. Citizens were also given rewards for returning runaway slaves and were even rewarded when they brought back the wrong slave. This increased slavery significantly and built up tensions between North and South states. Soon after the fugitive slave law became more strict, the Dred Scott decision was made in 1857. Dred Scott was a slave that sued for his freedom. The Supreme Court ruled that a slave was not a citizen and therefore could not sue in federal courts since a slave was their master's property. They could be taken into any territory and be held as slaves because Congress had no power to ban slavery. Buchanan denied African Americans the right to become U.S. citizens, which also increased tensions between the North and the South. In 1857, Buchanan supported the Lecompton Constitution, which would have allowed Kansas to become a slave state. The Lecompton Constitution protected slaves holding and had its own Bill of Rights excluding free blacks. Even though this was rejected, Buchanan supported these ideas, leading us to one step further to the breakout of the Civil War because of the rising tensions over slavery. The Civil War broke out soon after Buchanan left office. Buchanan deserves to be in the Hall of Shame because he created tensions between the North and the South, which led to the Civil War.